Rogue Legacy is a Metroidvania-style platformer on Steam. In it you play as the heir to royalty on a quest of revenge against your family's original forefather, Prince Johannes. Let me preface this entire review by saying I hate just about every facet of this game. But T, I hear you saying, all these other folks gave it a great score. What's your deal? Well, pardon me for having an opinion on my own YouTube channel. Why don't I like it? Oh, let me count the ways this game comes across not only as pretentious, but lazy. Let's bring up a checklist, shall we? Randomly generated dungeons? Check. 12 sets of armor that are just the same set, recolored 12 times? Check. Nearly impossible minigames that don't adequately reward you if you somehow do win? Check. Boss characters that are just bigger versions of enemies you've been fighting the entire game? Check. Pretentiously named characters? Check, 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 and check. Stop the video if you want to read those. I've got better things to do than sit and explain them for 20 minutes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In Rogue Legacy, you go from room to room of a castle gathering gold. When you die, and you will, a lot, your heir will spend said gold on upgrades, whether that be small stat bumps, armor, or runes to augment said armor. Then you'll venture into the castle again to gather more gold until you die again and the cycle repeats. The castle itself is arranged into 4 sections, and these chunks are the only things that aren't randomized. The rooms are still completely messed up. The tower is always above you, the dungeon is always below you, and the forest is always to the far east of the main castle. Each chunk of the castle has a boss that must be killed, corresponding with a pictograph on this big golden door here. When all of them are beaten, you can open the door and take on the final boss inside. Simple in concept, but not in execution. Called to the forefront, this game is difficult. Keyboard smashingly, controller throwingly difficult. You will die. You will die so much that you will never value your randomly generated, quirk-laden characters. You can get anything from giantism to astigmatism to irritable bowel syndrome. You might be colorblind, you might even have vertigo, which makes the game fucking impossible to play. You're given a choice of 3 heirs every time you die, and 90% of the time I was just choosing whichever one sucked the least or whoever had the most useful spell. With the randomly generated everything this game has to offer, there's nothing to get invested in beyond trying to hone your skills so you don't die every 30 seconds. The bosses ramp up the difficulty even further, often turning into single-room bullet hell clusterfucks where you can just die in a few hits if you aren't extremely skilled and very careful in your platforming. And if those bosses aren't enough for you, there are revamped versions that are even harder because you can't use all the upgrades you bought next time around. They are so difficult that every single boss and revamped boss has its own achievement, making up for the bulk of the Sting achievements that this game has to offer. Suppose you do actually beat all 4 bosses and the door opens. Time to take on the prince.
Knock knock, bitch!
According to the story, which is scattered in journals throughout the castle, the prince is being kept alive by the Fountain of Youth, and you have to kill both him and the fountain itself to win. Since the guardian at the front of the castle took all the prince's money when he set foot inside, the entire country went broke, leaving you with nothing but a selfish ancestor and a rogue's legacy. Wow, way to work the title's meaning into the last 10 minutes of this 20-hour game. Good job. The final boss is insultingly easy. You are so powerful by this point from grinding all your gold and getting all your upgrades for hours and hours and hours that he is an absolute pushover compared to the other 4 bosses. I hate this so much. I hate when a game is so needlessly grindy and difficult only to throw some chump final boss at me at the 11th hour that I just steamroll over. And when you beat the game, what do you get? Well, this is how many times you died, and this is how long it took you to beat the game. Enjoy Game Plus mode, fucker!
See you later, fucker!
As if the game wasn't already hard enough, you're rewarded with, after all your pain and suffering through this fucking impossible game, by an even harder version of the game. Fuck you, Rogue Legacy, I've got better games to play.